Greetings one and all, and welcome to my latest in my viewer variants series of videos. I'm your host, as always, Doodleman149, and in case you're new, in this series I take suggestions from you, the viewers, and try them out in Core Domination, Ground War, and Warzone. I then rank them in each category before giving the build a final rating at the end. This here is my ratings chart. If you take a closer look at it, it's different from traditional schooling grades where a 5 isn't a failing grade, it's just average. Feel free to pause the video for a little bit if you need more time to check this out. For today's video, we have a suggestion from a very active viewer, Eric Whitehead. He suggested an M91 build that certainly seems more suited to a slower playstyle, perhaps holding down lanes and such. I think I'll have a pretty easy time with this one since I do really like the M91. Now, before I hop into this, after you watch the video, feel free to let me know your thoughts on the build suggested today. Also, if you happen to like what you see, don't hesitate to hit that subscribe button for more great Modern Warfare content. Enough of that intro though, let's get into this build. For Eric's M91 build, we start off in the muzzle section with the very boring monolithic suppressor for boosted range and sound suppression. After that, we skip right to the stock section and equip the XRK Striker stock for boosted ADS speed at the cost of stability. Sleight of Hand is the perk here to speed up this weapon's very slow reload. The 150 round belt magazine is then utilized for greatly boosted ammo capacity, requiring fewer reloads over multiple engagements. And the build is rounded off by the Merc foregrip for boosted recoil and hipfire control at the cost of ADS and movement speed. Now, while this build certainly felt rather clunky for Core Domination, given the decreased speed provided by the monolithic suppressor, the 150 round belt magazine, and the Merc foregrip, this build was still very solid when playing defensively. I don't find the base irons on the M91 to be that great because they seem kinda bulky at times, but I was able to use this build effectively enough. I wasn't exactly pushing objectives with this build, so keep that in mind. My role became much more of a support gunner role where I could assist in a push from the rear or hold an objective against waves of enemies without needing to reload. Speaking of reloading, I was surprised by how much Sleight of Hand changes the reload speed on this weapon. The XRK Striker stock does its best to mitigate some of the downsides of the other attachments, but it can only do so much by itself. If I were to change anything, I'd probably throw a muzzle brake on this in place of the suppressor, just to more evenly balance out the weapon's recoil. All in all, this build is pretty good, so long as you don't mind playing a little slower. For Core Domination, Eric Whitehead's M91 gets itself a 6 out of 10. When I took this M91 build into Ground War, I, of course, was initially saddled with my least favorite map, Anaya Palace. The large number of CQC areas really made this build suffer against other, faster weapons. However, at range, and provided I had a good flank with a suppressed LMG, I could grab some good multi-kills. I feel like my biggest challenge with this build was its ADS speed. Normally, this isn't really an issue on Ground War, but I feel like I was having a problem with this because I was playing more aggressively. Not only that, I was getting annoyed by dying and spawning so far from the fight, and then having to deal with this build's pretty bad movement speed. Now, these criticisms are all subjective. They only really apply to a handful of matches I used this build on. Other than those times, I have to admit, this build is still pretty solid. Its large ammo capacity and relatively easy to manage recoil make it a good mid to long range fighter. I'm not a huge fan of this weapon's iron sights, as I mentioned before, so I felt an optic might have helped a little. It's a slow build overall. The stock does little to mitigate the slow ADS speed of this build, and the ammo capacity and Merc foregrip make this already slow weapon that much slower. For Ground War, this M91 build earns itself a 5 out of 10. When it came to my testing of this M91 build in Plunder, I honestly wasn't looking forward to it. I thought this build would perform pretty poorly there since it lacked a sight and isn't really a close range weapon. I thought this weapon wouldn't do too well at long and close ranges respectively. However, there were a couple situations where I just absolutely hammered people with this build. The introduction of armor into the equation actually worked in this weapon's favor here. You would think that an LMG with a slower fire rate would suffer with increased health, and in some instances this was in fact the case. However, the fact that I had armor is what let me lay into enemies. The biggest issue with Ground War is that the ranges are much larger than Domination maps, but everyone's health is still low. This makes me feel very frail when taking something heavy into a firefight. In Plunder, the fact that I could have 250 health let me land enough hits on my enemies to throw their aim off while I just held the trigger. The irons still aren't good for this mode, but the balanced recoil and massive ammo capacity make this weapon great for squad wiping. This M91 racks up a 7 out of 10 for Warzone and Plunder. And that'll do it for my coverage of Eric Whitehead's M91 build. I'd like to apologize for how long it took me to make this video. I know the suggestion was made quite a while ago, but I was just getting caught up playing other games, getting frustrated with Warzone and how Modern Warfare is being treated, and finally by taking a vacation with my wife on the 4th of July. Hopefully this video didn't come too late. I have a ton of other viewer variants to do, almost 20 or so, and so this series is going to take me a while to make. If you've made a suggestion, just please hang tight. I don't do this full time, so I can't pump out content as quickly as bigger channels can. Anywho, I had fun using this M91 build. I had to find a cool blueprint for this build, and I think I found one. Typically, I don't like suppressing LMGs, I just enjoy the noise of them. But the monolithic suppressor was a good choice, as it's the only thing that boosts this build's range at all. The stock does its best to boost our ADS speed, but it's not that great, really. Sleight of hand works remarkably well on this weapon, so that was a nice change of pace. The max ammo belt and the Mark IV grip both make this build what it is, but boy do they slow it down. Even with that slower speed, this build works well in Core Domination. A soldier's fragility really prevents this build from providing suppressing fire in ground war, and its slow speeds hold it back in that mode. But surprisingly, this build works even better in Warzone than it does in Domination. The added health armor adds lets the user lay into foes for longer and provide that support fire role. So for my final rating, Eric Whitehead's M91 gets itself a 6 out of 10. This build was fun to use. It's honestly a good plunder choice. I've got better builds for Domination and Ground War though. So, with that, I'd like to thank you all for making it to the end of this video. It's been a long time coming, and this video itself is decently long, so I really appreciate you all sticking with me here. If you'd enjoyed this video, feel free to show the YouTube gods what you like by hitting that thumbs up button. If you don't ever want to miss another upload from your newest favorite YouTuber, then there's that handy subscribe button free to press as well. I've really appreciated all your time, and I hope you're all having a great day and an even better week. Summer is here, so for those of you who enjoy this season, more power to you. To those who are like me, then enjoy your AC. I've been your host, Doodleman149, you've all been amazing, and I will see you later.